Alright. Hey, I'm Aqua or Aquarius of Fallen Snow if you don't know me. Welcome to this episode of the Shootin' Gallery podcast. Happy to have you back if you've been here before. So let's just jump right into it. It's time to yap a little bit. I've had some ideas on my head, and yesterday I microdosed, or I did a small shrooms trip with my girlfriend Julia. I had, what was it? We both had half or like 75% of a gram, 0.75 of a gram. Um, we both had 3/4 of a gram, right? And I had some interesting thoughts during it. I did some meditation, which was awesome. It was super peaceful, super centering. And some of the thoughts I had, on the shrooms trip were talking about philosophy. So that's kind of what I want to talk about in this episode. But I think philosophy as a study is an amazing tool and resource that we should use more often in terms of looking at people's points of view, their biases, and how they live their life. But remembering that we don't have to subscribe to only one school of thought or form of philosophy, right? We have the ability to switch which one which one we're living in or embodying at whichever time. But I think philosophy as a whole kind of shows us how people have biases or how they look at the world. And just having that understanding of each other's points of view and how we interpret different things, I think would be so helpful in terms of conversation, in terms of, growing and building society for the better to the future. And I don't know, it's so interesting that people can say a lot of people don't even a lot of people don't even know about philosophy, but then there are people who say they do, but then they only look at single schools of thought or single groups of philosophy or philosophers and say, "Oh, well, this is objectively wrong because this and this." It's like, "Okay, well, anything you say about another person or group of people is going to be subjective based on your own bias and point of view, right?" And to some extent, the ego. So I think a true philosopher almost has to look at the world or try to look at the world from that non-biased point of view to not have their own schools of thought or philosophies interfere with whatever conversation or with whatever interaction they're having or whoever they're talking to, right? And yeah, this is why I like looking into philosophy, psychology, anthropology, sociology, like all of it, biology especially, the chemistry in the brain, right? And I think it all needs to be taken into consideration, right? Especially in terms of places like the legal system or the prison system, where they talk about, oh, it's supposed to be for rehabilitation, but then especially in the States you see this where prisoners are treated as slaves. They are literally thought of as slaves. I'm pretty sure that's in the Constitution. And it makes me wonder, like, okay, well, how much rehabilitation are you doing? Because obviously that's free work. So is the whole system not going to be geared towards putting people in prison just for the free labor? Which you can see it obviously is, right? So I think in terms of criminals or criminal behavior, we have to look at it in terms of, okay, if someone commits a crime, obviously there have to be consequences for the action, right? But then where do the consequences stop in a sense, and where does it really turn into rehabilitation? And I'm going to go two ways with this. The first one is that if people really, like genuine people, want to be rehabilitated, want to be reintegrated into society, I think obviously the first step has to be, if you commit a crime, has to be therapy, psychotherapy, or normal therapy to get an understanding of your state of mind and how you think about the world. And then if you show signs of being empathetic, remorseful, showing that, you can genuinely understand the depth and the impact of the actions that you took and the consequences because of that, right? But then, this is why I've been looking into pathocracy and psychopathy, sociopathy, all these different mental states and disorders, conditions, whatever you want to call them, because I think we really have to have an understanding of people's mental psychology or mental workings, their biology even, to truly understand how the brain works and why they do what they do, right? And I think what we would end up finding is that a lot of people in the prison system, it is more a product of their environment. Oh, sorry. It is more a product of their environment and how they were raised, how they grew up, the influences that they had in their life that lead them to this point of committing a crime, right? Whether it's economic, whether it's family or societal, like there has to be an understanding of like, okay, why did you do what you did, right? And again, if people show signs of like empathy, remorse, then there has to be a level of like, okay, reintroducing them into society over time. Obviously, it has to take a while and, baby steps to get to that point. But the inverse of that is the people who truly can't see the malice in their ways, or they can't see what they did wrong. And I think then you start touching on psychopathy, sociopathy, and all these different things. And the difference between the two, which if you want to hear me go more in depth on them, I have videos on my channel, so definitely check those out, and I can put them in the description of this video. So what they've found from these studies is that, sociopathy and psychopathy, they may have some similar traits. Psychopathy is a lot more psychological and more to do with like the brain chemistry and lack of emotions, whereas sociopathy is more like an antisocial behavior from lack of socializing, and it can also be from trauma, either early onset, mostly early onset childhood stuff, right? And again, I'm not a professional in this stuff, but I'm trying to do the research to have a better understanding of it so I can have conversations about this stuff, right? But then it comes back to the same idea of like a drug addict, someone who is addicted to drugs for escaping reality. They have to want to help themselves to get sober. Nobody else can help them unless they want to help themselves. And I think that is the difference between, there has to be a level of understanding when people genuinely want to be better, to help others, to help themselves, to first help themselves, to then help others, right? Fill your glass up so it's full enough to pour into others. But then there has to be some sort of distinction or way of, realizing the difference between somebody who had some bad luck, somebody who fucked up, who made a bad decision, and someone who's, genuinely mentally ill, and the difference between how we can help those people, right? And looking into pathocracy, psychopathy, a lot of the time, from the data that I've found, it's like, okay, people in positions of power, children in families of nepotism, these are the people we should be keeping our eye on the most. And then the average everyday Joe, most likely it's going to be either some traits of sociopathy, I would assume, like antisocial behavior, or it's going to be because of the environment, how they grew up. But I don't know. Like, every child is born, every child is born the same, right? We don't have an understanding of the world. So how does this understanding of the world and how we interact with it develop over time based on nature, nurture, all these different factors, right? And then can we find can we find these aspects of society where we need the most work or the most improvement? And I think there are some societal changes we can make, but one of the simplest ones would be looking more into um, philosophy, sociology, psychology, all the things I mentioned before, right? And like truly implementing the findings that and truly implementing the findings in such a way that it actually makes a difference in society. But that's the problem with pathocracy. It's like these people with traits of psychopathy, these psychopaths and narcissists, are already in power and have built the system in such a way to hold the power in forms of authoritarian government, dictatorships, all this stuff. And I'm recording this after I recorded my last video, which was a deep dive and breakdown of pathocracy, but is going to be releasing after. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely check out my channel and look for that video. I should have it in the description as well. If I don't, drop a comment and I'll remember to put it in there. But yeah, it's crazy to me that, we operate in such a way. Sorry. It's crazy to me that we do operate in such a way where we operate with our own biases, our own ego, all this stuff. But then when it gets to a level of society where, we say, okay, innocent until proven guilty. If you are proven guilty, then there should be some level of rehabilitation. But then that stuff just gets lost because either of how the system is built or, well, yeah, basically because of the system, but people have the ability to not only change themselves, the system, they have to want to change themselves and the system for the better, right? So I just want to add one last thought here. This is after the fact of recording, but I want to add it into the video with some editing. But thinking about, boundaries and comfort zones and going through growth in life. And this is a conversation I was having with someone yesterday in terms of, I think, we grow in life not only from good situations, but from the bad, right? And I think anybody who experiences trauma or something traumatic or what they would consider something bad from their point of view happening in their life, I think that's all opportunity for growth and to learn from, right? And this might not be the best example, but since I was talking about prison and, consequences and, rehabilitation, this is going to be kind of a rough example, because if you think about, SA, sexual assault, or, even worse, there are things that happen in life because people are raised in such a shitty situation, or they don't have the mentors or the teachers in their life to teach them what's right and wrong to societal standards. And I think it gets to the point where people start doing shitty things, and then we just look at the person as they are in that moment when they did that shitty thing, and we say, okay, well, you are objectively a shitty person for doing that thing. But then where does the line get drawn between, something unexcusable and then something that can be rehabilitated from, you know what I mean? And I feel like it's on both ends, right? Can someone have something shitty happen to them and grow past that with understanding and empathy, not that the thing that happened was right or that the person was in some way not wrong for doing it, but understanding how the person got to that point to doing that thing, and can they change who they are from that point to a different version of themselves, to have different traits, to not do shitty things to other people, you know what I mean? But these are the kind of nuanced conversations we have to be having, because if we're not, then we're just perpetuating the system that exists right now, where we're saying, okay, if you do something bad, you go to prison, now you're a slave, now you're enslaved, even more so than, with economy and the system that we have right now. But it's like, the system that we have right now on the outside of prison being free, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all the illusion of freedom, and I've talked about this in other episodes of my podcast, but it's crazy to me that, where does that line get drawn? Obviously, people have boundaries, I understand that, but our boundaries, like, people have boundaries, right? I understand that, but boundaries, in my mind, are in some way a comfort zone, right? We all have comfort zones, areas or things that we wouldn't like to happen to us, we wouldn't like to have to do, but sometimes, whether it's our own decision or life happening to us, whether it's good things or shitty things, I think stepping out of the comfort zone is when you get the most growth and the most evolution as an individual, right? And this also kind of goes back to something I was saying, I think it was in my episode of the podcast titled Life is Beautiful, but can we look at these things that happen in life as opportunities for growth, or opportunities to change or see the world differently, change our perspectives, or are we going to treat everything as, everything's holding us back or keeping us suppressed, keeping us down? It's all a change of perspective, right? And I got two quotes here that will kind of reinforce that. A broken clock is right twice a day. If I'm wrong, at least learn from what I'm saying and try to continue this conversation. And now I can't remember the second thing, but yeah, I don't think there are any bad takes necessarily, as much as uneducated ones, or people trying to manipulate the system based on, a psychopathic trait or whatever it is. So can we find a way to figure out how to go about navigating that stuff? And I think it really comes down to, what is the point that people are trying to get across? What is the message that people are trying to preach? Because honestly, I'm trying to preach the idea of unity, truly coming together, understanding, empathy, love, all that good stuff. Obviously, people do shitty things, and there needs to be consequences to actions, right? Obviously. But where does the line get drawn between an action that is forgivable, or someone is able to come back from the shitty thing they do, or the line gets crossed of, no, you can't come back from that? You know what I mean? And again, going back to the justice system, it's innocent until proven guilty. If you are proven guilty, okay, then you go into the rehabilitation process, and then you have to see, like, are you able to be rehabilitated, or do you have to be separated from society somewhat? Like, I think these are the important conversations and questions we have to be having and asking to truly advance society in the right direction, to a world without money, to a world of understanding, empathy, to people's situation and how they got to the point that they're at in their life at that moment. You know what I mean? But yeah, like I said, it is a bit of a yap fest here, so I'll try to get on some more interesting topics in a way. Another thing I thought about yesterday on the shrooms trip, Jewel put on this video of like an AI video, like a psychedelic trip where it was just constantly changing and moving, and some of the visuals were just so crazy and beautiful. It literally looked like a dream, like the computer was dreaming, and I think that is so cool as a form of art and creation. But one of the things that popped up was, this eye at first, and it turned into like a black hole or like a sun or something like that. But it was like an empty void with light radiating around it, and I said, oh, that looks like an eye that turned into a black hole. And then I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh shit, what if a black hole is kind of like the iris of the universe in a way, where it's absorbing the light or taking in the light and then turning into a thought, into a perception, and that's where you would get this, dilation or change of time and space as we know it, because it's then being transformed into something else, right? When you take the light into your eyes, is it not like you're kind of taking a snapshot of what you are seeing and putting it into your brain to interpret and to form your own conscious thoughts about what you're seeing, right? And I think that idea in itself is just so crazy, but I don't know. If you guys have never done shrooms, I highly suggest start with micro doses. Just start low to get yourself into it, to get your body used to it, especially now that the weather's warming up. Yeah, definitely get outside on a warm, sunny day. Go for a walk, microdose, and see what happens. Try to, exist without having that thought, basically, or try to breathe without thinking about anything, just thinking about your breath, and it's pretty freeing, it's pretty cool. Because time and space is connected. This is a whole nother thing that kind of goes to the black hole topic, but if time and space are connected, what does it mean or look like to step outside of that? And I think if you step outside of one, you're stepping outside of both. But then, if there's some way that you are stepping away from the space and you see the different like frames in a movie, there's also still time and space involved in that, because you are still seeing the things that make up those different frames of the movie, and there's still time associated with that and choosing, you know what I mean? Like, what is outside of time and space? I think then you're getting closer to source, maybe antimatter, or, a sense of God, quote unquote, whatever you want to call that, but, that true essence or framework of everything that we can perceive, right? But again, this is a really deep conversation and a deep topic. This is why I love talking about it, though, because, I feel like this is the most important stuff to talk about in life. Fuck the superficial stuff. Fuck all the societal, talking about gender and sex and all this different stuff. I don't think that matters as much if you're only talking about in the superficial, three-dimensional skin suit body. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? But yeah, I like microdosing, even with the SSRIs. Even with my SSRIs, which are these anti-anxiety, antidepressant medicine, super low dose that I started taking, it seems to be helping, because on the trip I really didn't have much anxiety or depression. It was just a it was just a smooth flowing trip where, I was remembering I am not my thoughts, I'm just experiencing life around me, and it really was so peaceful and freeing, and it's such a nice feeling. I highly suggest everybody try shrooms, especially because they're natural. If you don't like the taste of them, the shrooms chocolate bars or the psilocybin chocolate bars are great if you can find those. Websites online, you can find them and order them to your place. It might not be 100% legal, but hey, do what you gotta do. But yeah, unfortunately, my throat is starting to hurt. It was feeling alright at the start of this, but, I have to let it do the healing before I can go back to making content, obviously. And I've been recording content, and I was talking to Julie yesterday, so it's getting a little bit fried again. But I covered a bunch of great topics in this episode, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on them, and, drop them in the comments. Let me know what you think about the things that I've been talking about in this episode. Definitely check out the other videos I've been recording and posting because I'm trying to put more effort and work into them. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. Not only does it help support the channel, but then you can be part of the community and help us grow, because I see here we are 1 subscriber off from 40 subscribers, which is an amazing milestone and goal, you know. Honestly, we've hit it pretty quick. I've only really been consistently posting videos for about a year now. And even that amount of growth is amazing, and I'm so grateful for everybody who's here watching this, interacting with the channel, all the videos, and just adding to this conversation of everything, basically. I think it's awesome. I love it. But that being said, I'll leave it here for this one. My throat is starting to hurt, and I gotta keep doing some chores today. But like I say in all of my videos, I love you, stay safe, good luck, and take it easy.